Welcome to Secrets for an Inspirational Life with Mimi Novic, the place where every heart tells its story. Whether it's inspiration, courage or hope you need, you've come to the right place. Sit back and enjoy the journey with us. Subscribe below to be sure you don't miss future episodes.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Secrets for an Inspirational Life. How are you all today? I hope you are well, and I hope you are taking some extraordinary chances. And that's something I think that we all forget to do, is to take the chance when it appears, because sometimes it doesn't happen twice. And actually, pretty much usually, it only happens once in a lifetime. And it's these moments that we live for, because these are the moments that change our lives. And when we have the courage to embrace these special moments, it gives us a zest and an inner freedom to actually live the life that we want to live and not live by the dictates of what other people tell us that we should or that we could live. It is our life. It is your life. And take the responsibility, take the chance, and you never know where it can take you. Now, I am absolutely delighted to welcome my special guest today, who is all the way from New Zealand, and that is the very interesting Faye Lawand. Faye is an internal conflict resolution expert and nervous system specialist. She is also the founder of the Mental Wealth Blueprint. She helps people overcome poor mental health, exhaustion, and pain without medication, meditation, or talk therapy in 3 months or less. Her system has helped thousands of clients climb free. She harnesses the power of the subconscious mind and the nervous system to banish poor mental health and chronic pain. Faye was born in the Middle East, where she lived through the pain and trauma of war. She herself has battled with chronic conditions most of her life. But when the traditional solutions of prescription medication and therapy failed her, she sought out her own. Faye helps clients and students kick the tiredness and overwhelm and finally feel like themselves again by dispelling the internal conflicts rooted in the nervous system and subconscious mind. Today, she shares her incredible journey. Welcome, dear Faye.
Thank you so much, Mimi. It's so nice to be with you from the future here in New Zealand.
Yes, because now you are. What day are you?
So we're Wednesday morning,
and we are Tuesday evening. Now, how
yes.
absolutely amazing is that? We are in 2 time zones, in 2 worlds, and you are actually in the future.
We're in the future. And can't technology be quite a marvelous thing to connect the future and the past this way?
Well, I don't know if it's technology or it's some other sort of I don't know, force that does it.
Yes, and I like that, Mimi.
And actually, Faye, it makes me always wonder about this time concept, because I think it's all a load of nonsense now, because every time I see these time differences, like, for example, you are now in the future, I think, well, actually, time doesn't really exist.
You're absolutely right. It's very much an illusion. And in the expanded consciousness and reality where where our completeness lies, there is no time and there is no space. It's all interconnected and it's all happening in the here and the now. So thanks for that reminder.
Yes, you're very welcome. And thank you for the reminder. Your mere presence has reminded me of that. Now, thank you so much, actually, Faye, for coming on. And you're going to share some wonderful insights, I know. Now, you do a lot of work and a lot of different work. And you must start, really, by telling us, how did your journey into this work, into this vocation begin? How did that all start?
Yes, I like what you said, that it is a vocation, because that's the best way of describing it. And I think it's the simple answer is it was a matter of necessity. Like when I was a child at school, a teenager, and my teacher would ask, "What would you like to be when you grow up?" Like I never ever said, "Oh, I want to be an internal conflict resolution expert," or I never put up my hand to say I want to be a nervous system specialist. I mean, I didn't even know what that was. I didn't even know that was a thing back then, right? But it was simply a matter of necessity. So I had 3 burnouts over the course of about 15 years. And I immediately after the first one, when the prescription was medication and talk therapy, I instinctively knew that neither one were going to provide the long-lasting solutions that I was after, and to do so in a way that is expedient, that has no side effects, that actually works, and that really is powerful and effective in creating an internal transformation. Like I intuitively knew that therapy and medication weren't going to cut it for me. And back then, so my first burnout happened 16 years ago. And coincidentally, it happened when I was living and working on a Caribbean island of Curacao, which is just off the coast of Venezuela. And so I make that point, Mimi, just to point out that burnout can strike anywhere. Like I was living where people go to escape their troubles, because burnout and these poor mental health conditions that are not about our environment, they're not about our external reality, they're very much an internal experience, right? And so that's where my first burnout happened about 16 years ago. And that's where the prescription was talk therapy and medication. And even though I knew nothing about the mind-body connection, I knew nothing about the subconscious mind, I knew nothing about the nervous system, as I said, I intuitively knew what I wanted and what I felt wouldn't get me there. And so I started a journey. I started an inquiry. That's what it was. It was an inquiry into what does it take to be healthy, happy, and well. And, because I am very much a lifelong learner and I love to study and learn and grow, that journey was, it was a long journey, but it was one that really fueled me from the inside, because it was amazing to learn from different traditions and learn from different experts and learn from different frameworks and different ideas about actually what it takes to be happy, healthy, and well. And so not only did I read books, but I started doing courses and workshops and trainings and certifications, and every little bit helped, but it didn't really take me the whole way, especially during that first burnout, because I didn't know what I was doing. But definitely, it provided an immediate help with the most persistent symptoms during that first burnout, which were really like the fainting spells and the vertigo and the dizziness, and of course the chronic headaches and the chronic back pain. So those symptoms seemed to wane slowly within the first few months of starting on my inquiry, but it didn't really provide the long-lasting internal transformation that I was looking for. But I was able to carry on with my life. Now, at the time, I was working in education. And a few years later, I moved to the Middle East. I moved to Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. And that's where I met my Kiwi husband, actually. He had the office right next door to me. And that's where I had my second burnout. And my second burnout was a lot more a lot more intense and a lot scarier than the first burnout. And here's the thing. Here's the thing, Mimi. Our body, our mind always, always, always speaks to us through our body, eh? Always. It will always send signals through symptoms, through physical symptoms about internal dysregulation. And it's to the extent that we take heed of those symptoms and what those symptoms are communicating to us that we can get back on track. But if you don't know that your mind communicates through your body with symptoms, or you ignore the symptoms, or you don't know how to read your symptoms, the symptoms will continue to multiply and intensify until they come to a point of no return where you have like a real meltdown and a real breakdown. And that's what happened. That's what happened with me. And it was my second burnout happened in Dubai. At that point, I had turned 40. And my body manifested precancerous cells. And in that moment, I realized that if I didn't take this call seriously, then the trajectory of my life and my health were actually, going to be in a downward facing trajectory. And this is when I got even more serious about what it takes to be happy, healthy, and well. And I went and I dug even deeper. And this is when I uncovered the role of the subconscious mind, because up until that point, I was only working like very much on a conscious cognitive level with lifestyle practices, which are very important. I was exercising, paying attention to like fitness and nutrition and sleep and doing the journaling and the affirmations, because that's kind of like the first layer. When you want to overhaul your life, that's kind of where they get started. And there's a reason why those pillars and those foundations are there, because without those pillars and those foundations, you can't do the deeper work that will really create the internal alchemy. So the work had been done at a superficial level, but during that second burnout, when I came across the subconscious mind, I realized that if I didn't work at a deep subconscious level, that I am not going to be able to come out on the other side and resolve whatever there is hidden underneath the surface that was keeping the system in that very stuck place. And that was actually quite transformational, working with the subconscious mind. And within a few months, the symptoms radically resolved. And it wasn't just the physical symptoms that radically resolved. Also, my life started to expand. And that's when I, fell in love with my now husband. And this is also when I shifted directions in my career, and I created a wellness business in order to help other people get unstuck. But that wasn't enough. Working with the nervous system was not enough, Mimi, because I eventually had a third burnout when I moved here to New Zealand in 2014. And my third burnout happened when I was at my happiest. I had just gotten married to the man of my dreams, moved countries to the most beautiful, most progressive place on earth. And that's when my third burnout happened. And it was during the inquiry into what it takes to come out of that third burnout that my work led me to the nervous system and the importance of nervous system regulation and the importance of working with a felt sense of safety. And when I started incorporating those practices into my life and into my routine, not only did the burnout symptoms reverse themselves, but I haven't had another burnout since. And I know that I will not have another burnout since, because I know that now I'm working at the level at which these issues are created and stored. And when you work at the level where issues are created and stored, there's no reason for the symptoms to arise or to persist. So to basically sum up what the answer to your question, which was a little bit long-winded, I came to the work that I'm doing as a result of 3 burnouts, each of which taught me really important tools, concepts, and resources that are necessary to come out of these conditions without medication and talk therapy. And I hope that that's answered your question.
It's fantastic, actually. It's a fantastic answer. And so much within that I want to ask you, because so many people do experience burnouts. And for people
Yes.
out there, before we go on, so that we're clear, explain, Faye, for people out there listening, what is a burnout?
Yes. And thank you for asking that, because I was going to at some point offer clarifying explanations around that, because
Yes.
burnout is not just about exhaustion and tiredness, although that there's the most obvious manifestation of it, but that is the last symptom of, and that is just one symptom. So burnout is actually a nervous system state, and it comes from nervous system overwhelm and nervous system overload. When the nervous system is just so overloaded with life experiences that haven't been processed and metabolized, that the system starts to quite literally go into shutdown and preservation mode, where the only thing that the system is concerned about is the survival of your physical body. So everything else gets deprioritized except for the beating of your heart and the breathing of your lungs. And this is why when we are in burnout states, not only are we exhausted, but also there's a lot of these chronic conditions that coexist with burnout, where our mood is very low, our sleep is interrupted, we might have chronic pain, our thoughts are all over the place, we suffer from really low mood, we procrastinate, we are very much in the people pleasing and comparisonitis mode. It's really difficult to focus. Our thoughts are all over the place. We have very intrusive thoughts. And we may also even have suicidal thoughts, because that's very much part of a nervous system that has gone to that shutdown mode and that shutdown state where there's nothing else left other than the survival of your physical body. And so burnout always coexists with these chronic conditions. And to get out of burnout, you need to reverse engineer what got the nervous system to that place to begin with. And that is always, 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 Mimi, unresolved internal conflict. It's unresolved internal inner turmoil. It's internal chaos that hasn't been dealt with, that hasn't been integrated, and that hasn't been adequately metabolized. And this stuff is so subconscious, it is so much, we are not aware of it with our conscious thinking minds. And this is why talk therapy alone will never, ever, ever get your system unstuck from those states that are locking your nervous system into these burnout conditions and other chronic conditions. So you have to go to work with modalities that reverse engineer how the system got there to begin with. And that's always nervous system principles and subconscious mind modalities.
Now, so it's easier because this is so many things on very, very deep levels and multifaceted and multi-layered about the human psyche. But for us to understand in a simplistic way, so that we can all relate it to ourselves, because I think if we can all relate it to ourselves, it's much easier then to understand, to, I suppose, accept, and then to find help for these conditions. So could you, Faye, please give us an example of someone that has gone into burnout? Say, give us a reason that they may have gone into burnout.
Right. Yes. Well, I'm very happy to share with you when I eventually did the inner work that helped me come out of burnout. What was uncovered. Now, and when I share my story, people either relate to it or they don't, because I was born in a war zone. I was born in a place where chaos and conflict are very much in your face. I was born in Lebanon during the civil war of the 1970s. And that war, not only did it kill and maim hundreds of thousands of people, but it actually displaced millions of others. And my family and I were in that statistic that were displaced. So we left the area of conflict pretty early on, like about within the first year. So I was quite young. I was about 5 years old when we left the area of conflict. I was about 4 when the conflict started. So I lived for about a year in that conflict zone. Now, when we left the area of conflict, we lived in places like Cyprus and Greece and Canada and the United States, and then eventually in Curacao. So I lived in places that were conflict free. There were places of freedom. There were places of peace, of stability, and of prosperity. So when I had my burnouts and I decided to go deep in order to uncover what's behind the burnout, so that my system doesn't go there anymore. Lo and behold, because I had grown up with the belief system that I left the area of conflict early, therefore, I wasn't affected by the conflict. I always dismissed the role of war and conflict on what happened later on in life. I also dismissed the role of anything that happened early on in life on later experiences as an adult. And so when I had my second burnout and I was in Dubai, and I had uncovered the work of the subconscious mind, and I thought, okay, this holds a lot of promise, and this makes it's common sense that the part of your mind that remembers everything and that stores all of your life experiences, your emotions, and your beliefs runs also your body. It makes a lot of sense that it will hold the key in terms of what happened and how to overcome it. So I scheduled myself for a session with a clinical hypnotherapist. And the clinical hypnotherapist at the time did for me what I now do for my clients. And she instructed my subconscious mind to go back to the very, very, very first time that was responsible for all of the issues in my adult life. And at that point, I was 40 years old. And the mind is very compliant. Like, it always, always wants to serve you. It always seeks resolution for you and for your life. So the mind complied, and it went back to the time that I was 5 years old and we're fleeing the war zone. And in that scene that the subconscious mind revealed, about 10 minutes into the journey to the airport, the bombs started and there were snipers in the distance. And, my mother was fleeing a war zone without her husband, who was caught outside the country, and 3 very young children. So in order to keep us kids safe, she pushed all of our heads underneath the seats of the car. And in that moment, what was revealed to me in my subconscious is, in that moment, I couldn't breathe and I felt that I was going to die. And the nervous system in that moment went into survival mode when I was 5 years old, and it never shut down again. So the biology of chronic stress and chronic survival never switched off and remained active all those years. And eventually the system quite literally ran out of fuel. And so to answer your question around, what is it that can take a system into burnout? It doesn't have to be fleeing a war zone, but it is always an overwhelming traumatic experience that hasn't been processed and hasn't been metabolized. And a lot of times we think that trauma, and this is the traditional view of trauma, is that trauma are those big life-threatening situations, like in my case, fleeing a war zone, or it could be abuse, or it could be kidnapping, or it could be natural disasters. And while all of those experiences definitely create an internal biology of stress and survival, so do other experiences, like being bullied, like having an unpleasant breakup, like experiencing a lot of bickering in the home, like being talked down to, like being displaced. All of those experiences, which are now referred to as small t traumas, also trigger the same internal biology of stress and chronic stress for the body. And the mind cannot differentiate the difference between an event like fleeing a war zone or an event like being bullied. The mind cannot differentiate the the biology of surviving abuse or being belittled. It's the same internal experience. And because it's the same internal experience, the outcome and the result are the same, which is a system that goes into burnout. So when I work with my clients, it's a whole range of experiences that are the root cause or the root causes of their burnouts. But it is always, always, always an event that was traumatic, that was overwhelming, that was sudden, that was dramatic, and where they felt that they couldn't cope and they felt that they didn't have the internal resources to deal with it. And it looks different for different people. And here's the thing, Mimi, we all have internal conflicts. Like if we are in a place right now in our adult life where we're not experiencing either the levels of health, abundance, or success that we're seeking, it's because there is an internal blockage. There's an internal limitation. And that internal limitation comes from a story or a program that was created at a time of disempowerment and at a time where our system was overwhelmed quite literally and felt that it couldn't cope.
What an explanation. And actually, it shows you what a kaleidoscope we all are of these experiences. And one thing, Faye, that really was sort of at the top of while you were talking about all of this is that every single one of us, it doesn't matter who, has been through something. And
yes.
What may affect you may not affect me and vice versa. But it shows that we never quite know what that experience that we have with a situation, with a person, how it actually affects us on so many levels. And we as souls are so, in one way, so fragile, but in another way, so magnificent. And we never quite know what is actually going to hurt us until it's hurt us.
Yes.
And when it does hurt us, we can carry that hurt for many years, because I'm aware of this, that what might have happened when we were young, for example, it can be at any age, but let's say in our childhood, can actually, through another event in our lives that's totally unrelated, can come up again and remind us of that. And that I find remarkable because, as you said, unless it's resolved, you never quite get over it. It's always some sort of hindrance in one's life. Now, how do we... What's the question that I want to ask you? Because there's so many questions I want to ask you. There's so many things I want to ask you. I suppose fundamentally is, if we look at somebody, it can be anybody walking down the road or people that we know, we can understand through what you have said now is that everybody is carrying trauma of some sort.
And in the past 4 years, even more so since COVID.
So absolutely. So how, for example, why is it that some people experience burnout? Some people experience breakdowns.
Yeah.
Some people experience complete, I suppose, stagnation of their life, where they can't have relationships or a job or whatever, move on. Is that to do with, because everyone is so unique, their nervous system is completely unique to them, and we experience things so differently?
Yes, that's a good question, and I'm very happy to elaborate on that. So there's this term called nervous system capacity, and if you think about, like, our nervous system is very much an experience organ, and what that means is it's very much conditioned based on the experiences that we've had, so, or that we are having. So when we have positive experiences, of course, we feel so different, not just in our physical body, but just in our internal selves. Just like when we have an experience that's negative or distressing, we have the opposite internal experience, right?
Yeah.
So, and all of us, because our nervous system is an experience organ, all of us have different internal capacity based on what we've experienced in our lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is why you can have two people in the same environment experiencing this, having the same external experience. One of them will end up with burnout, the other one won't. Let me give you an example. So I mentioned to you that I met my husband in Dubai. That's where I had my second burnout. And we had the office right next door to mine. And the external environment that led to my second burnout was working in an extremely toxic work environment, like nothing that anybody can fathom. It was very much a lead by shaming. It was just a horrible place to work. Point being, Mimi, we were two people experiencing the same external factors in the same external environment. I ended up with burnout and my husband didn't end up with burnout. And the reason is because he had more nervous system capacity to withstand what was going on in the environment than I had. And he had more nervous system capacity to navigate the situation because his container had more space internally, because he didn't have the same experiences that were taking up space and clogging up the container. And this is why it is so important for us to regularly work on creating capacity internally so that we can navigate the experiences that we go through, many of which are adverse. And when I said to you, I know that I will not have another burnout again, and I'll tell you why I know it. I know it because I have, through years of work and practices, created in a nervous system capacity where, yes, I still feel the hardships and the adversities and the challenges, but there's enough space for my system to be able to navigate that situation and to kind of like to take it on without being completely overwhelmed or without completely getting shut down by it. There's space on the inside for the emotion, for the sensation, for the thought, in order for that to move through. And that's the sort of that's the work that I'm so passionate about, particularly in a post-COVID world, where all 7 billion of us, all 7 billion nervous systems on the planet have all taken a hit. Because when we were talking earlier about like what creates internal conflict and small t trauma and big T trauma, well, what we experienced 4 years ago and during those COVID years is very much a big T trauma, very, very much a big T trauma. Because big T trauma happens when there is a perception, when the subconscious mind and the nervous system, they perceive that there is an actual threat to your physical survival. Now, if you think back to the messaging, particularly early on in COVID, during COVID, when the planet shut down early on, the messaging was that, we didn't know what COVID was, that this is a pandemic that could actually claim the lives of millions and billions of people. That's why we needed to shut down. But for many, many nervous systems, their nervous systems never caught on to the new reality that actually, no, you're not going to die and you're still alive, because the nervous system doesn't understand thoughts. It doesn't understand language. It doesn't understand that. It understands sensations and feelings and slowness and time and care and touch. That's what it understands. And so many of us have not taken the time to reset after the trauma of the pandemic years. And this is why across the planet now, but particularly in countries like New Zealand, where we had so many lockdowns, where the nervous systems of people here have been so traumatized, that now you see the level of aggression that is out there is unparalleled. The levels of suicide, which were high before COVID, are are just through the roof. The amount of road rage, the amount of now in supermarkets, actually, they're talking that that assaults in supermarkets have risen by 131% since before the COVID years. Also, assaults and aggression in the public healthcare system. It's just like and just customer service that is just so sloppy and so non-existent, and that sort of decay in terms of the way people relate to each other and in the way institutions work is very much a symptom of nervous system overload and nervous system dysregulation, where people just have not, there isn't enough space for people to deal with what life is throwing at them. And they revert back to the very much the impulsive, instinctive, reactive, aggressive behaviors that we're seeing nowadays that really don't contribute to an inspired life or inspired living.
That's such a good explanation, because it answers a lot of things for me, where I have seen people, not just in the United Kingdom, in other countries that I visited. And it is a sense of, how I look at it, Faye, is that you have the hyper active individuals where they are very angry, they're in a rush. Where they're going, I don't know. I don't think they know. So it's that panic-stricken behavior. Then you have, on the other hand, the other extreme, where people are pretty much asleep, don't really care what goes on, just sort of flowing around in the wind.
Directionless.
Absolutely. There's no sort of reason to do anything. Let's just watch the TV and I don't know.
Yeah. And use other numbing behaviors other than binge watching, the doom scrolling, the alcohol, all of that is numbing. It's numbing behaviors to avoid the internal discomfort that those experiences and that also trigger unresolved experiences from the past as well. During my practice, especially during COVID, people would come to me and say, "Oh, I thought that I had dealt with XYZ, but it all came back during COVID." And I know that was the same situation for me. You become aware of so much stuff that you thought you had dealt with, but when you're in a situation where, it's when your nervous system is in a situation that it doesn't understand, in a situation that it perceives as being threatening or being unsafe or being harmful, it will recreate all of those previous experiences that have the same texture and the same feeling as what you're experiencing in the current moment. And this is why, for so many of us, COVID triggered and brought to the surface a lot of stuff that hadn't been dealt with from the past. But with that, it brought an opportunity to address those things if we had the awareness, the self-awareness, the tools, the time, and we took the time and the space to deal with them. But sadly, what I'm saying is so many people are in the situation of an overactive nervous system due to the COVID years, coupled with all of that stuff from the past that hasn't been dealt with. And therefore, they revert to numbing behaviors and distracting behaviors and avoidant behaviors, the result of which is what we're seeing in our societies and in our communities. Just with the breakdown of services, the breakdown of relationships, and the breakdown of personal relationships. And this is really, really distressing. And I think unless we get really serious about root causes and going back to basics, I predict that the situation is going to get worse, not better.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something really that I often likened in a strange way. That period of time was in effect like a seclusion. And you know that people that want to reach higher levels of enlightenment and understanding about life, they go into a seclusion,
Yeah.
and they are put.
But that's voluntary, Mimi.
Well.
What I mean
How
by
do we know? How do we know?
Yeah.
That there
Yeah.
isn't a divine reason that everybody
yeah, I see what you're saying.
was put into that situation, because nobody came out of it unscathed.
I agree with that.
And people lost their lives, and some people lost their mental health, some people lost their
livelihoods, their relationships.
So what I'm saying is, if we're going to look at this, because we're going to have to look at this in a very global and, I suppose, open-hearted way, in order to find the answers and the survival techniques to live through what the world has become. And if we look at it, yes, seclusion can be voluntary, but sometimes there is a huge call on humanity to rethink which direction are they going on. Is this the correct road that humanity is hurtling down? Or is that actually a moment where catastrophes happen, things happen in life, and are heightened to such a level that you have to have such a strong faith to endure that? And by that, I mean that if you can go beyond what is happening, beyond the physical eyes, I'm saying, and look beyond, as we first started this conversation, beyond time and space, you can see actually that humanity is at a turning point. That
I agree.
It's a very narrow tunnel that not everybody can pass through.
I think we're on the same page there, that we are very much at crossroads. And I think to navigate the complexities that the world is facing nowadays, you definitely need a different level of vision and leadership, which unfortunately I don't think is on offer anywhere in any corner of the world. And without pointing fingers or getting too cynical or too disillusioned, these politicians and these government leaders that are navigating the situation, they also have a nervous system that's overloaded, and when the nervous system is overloaded, one of the things that happens on a cognitive level is all of the higher all of the smart brain functions, they go offline. So our capacity to think abstractly, our capacity to problem solve, our capacity to decision make, our capacity to think empathetically and think compassionately, it goes offline. All of those qualities that are so necessary now more than ever in our government leaders and in our political leaders to help move us forward are completely lacking in them, also because of nervous system dysregulation.
But we can't rely. This is the whole point. We can't rely on anybody. The point is, we have to rely on ourselves.
Yes.
And the world is turning, and there will always be leaders and non-leaders and good and bad. That is the way that the world is. But the point in all of this, I think, with the nervous system, is what I have found also, is that when you actually accept, this is a huge thing, I think, that you accept that you need help, that actually, what you were saying, that quote, what was that quote by Gabor Mate?
if you numb the uncomfortable emotions, you also numb the positive emotions.
Right. So there is no way that you and I can have any fantastic, beautiful experience if I've shut myself down because life is too traumatic and I'm looking outside of myself for some form of leadership.
Yeah.
These are not the times, and I don't think they will ever be the times unless there's a huge shift in the world consciousness. And I think it has to be that we have to change ourselves to become who we really and truly are and be the leaders of our own life.
Yes, take accountability. Take accountability and self-responsibility for the life we want to live. I could not agree with you more, because as magical as these levels of our mind are, the nervous system and the subconscious mind, the only way that you can access their potential is by you making a sovereign decision that says, no, I want something different for myself. And it is my responsibility to make it happen for my own life, no one else's. It's not the responsibility of my partner, my children, my boss, my job, my past. It's just my responsibility. I think we're very much on the same page there. Very, very much, Mimi. Yeah.
Yeah, and absolutely. To actually acknowledge, as you said, Faye, the sovereignty that actually we are and who we are. And we have to stop looking outside of ourselves for the answers. There are no answers out there. The answers are within. And I think also part of the nervous system, which I've had experience of, is when I get nervous about something, for example, it's usually because I'm not following what is the right course of action, because my gut feeling is telling me this way. And my mind is saying, well, actually, no, because the mind is so philosophical and it has so many, reasons why and why not. But unless we follow that gut feeling, which actually is the seat of the heart,
yes,
we're not going to get anywhere. We are going to be completely lost in this complete mad world. But if we follow the dictates of our heart and it's the sincerity of who we are and respect that we have been our whole lives, I think is a big trauma in some ways, trying to navigate the roads of this world.
There is nothing more traumatizing or nothing more triggering to a biology of stress more than dishonoring or numbing or silencing. Because if you think about it, from just a commonsensical perspective, the only time you would hide from something or pretend it's not there is because it's unsafe, right? Like from a very simple building blocks foundation. And this nervous system of ours, which is very much about our survival, but also that wants us to flourish, if it detects that you are hiding from yourself or hiding from your inner voice or hiding from your past or hiding from your dream or hiding from anything, it is going to switch on a biology of stress. It will switch on a biology of survival, because it doesn't know that you're hiding because you don't have the inner tools. It thinks that you're hiding because you're unsafe. And because it's a very much the primal part of who we are, it will go into that survival mode. And if we are in the habit of dishonoring ourselves over a lifetime, we will live over a lifetime with a biology of chronic stress that no amount of journaling or apping or meditating or doing yoga, deep yogic breaths will resolve, because it has gone on for too long, that it's run out of energy, and it's very much in stuck survival mode. So one of the things that I when people ask about, well, what are some things that you would recommend, like quick things that I could do, practical things that I can do to start coming out of those stuck patterns, to start helping my nervous system recover from the old way of doing things. Well, one of the most immediate ones that I teach and that I preach is to start welcoming everything that is there exactly as it is. And that means starting to be okay with everything without labeling it or judging it or pushing it away or willing something else to be there in its place, like simply noticing what is there without any type of agenda. And it's as we start to honor all parts of ourselves that all parts of ourselves start to feel welcome and aligned. And it's like they're working on one team and one team only, and that is Team Mimi, and taking Team Mimi to where she wants to be. And again, it goes back to that quote that we were talking about from Gabor Mate. If you numb or silence the uncomfortable stuff, you're also going to numb and silence the joyful stuff. You can't have it, we can't have it both ways. If we want to welcome in the joy and the gratitude and all of those positive internal states, we also need to welcome all the other parts of ourselves as well, because they're all part of the same whole.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said, Faye. I don't know if you can remember, it was just what a line about if we, in a way, if we're going to dishonor ourselves, if we try to hide who we are, in a nutshell, this is where really difficult situations arise in our life.
That's where trouble arises all the time. It arises from there, from trying to hide or pretend that something is not there. Now, look, there are certain times, obviously, that we need to be, practical about what we reveal and how we reveal it, for sure. Like, I'm not here by this message. I am not promoting that you go out there and you share every single nuance of your internal life and your internal experience. It's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying is that you stop hiding from yourself. Like, you can hide from anyone else, but not from yourself.
Yeah.
That you're not hiding those memories, those feelings, those fears, those sensations, those internal experiences from yourself. And that you carve out time regularly, daily, and consistently to be still, to be with yourself, and to go inward and to notice what's happening on the inside. Because what's happening on the inside always, always, always carries cues and messages about what you need to be doing differently on the outside. Like how you need to course correct, what you need to stop doing, and continue doing.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And it is so wonderful what you say, because it also reminds me of that not only should we not hide from ourselves, that's number one, but not to hide our light and who we are to people who criticize us, who demean us, our mere presence irritates them by who we are. We should be even more who we are. Because I think also the thing about hiding ourselves and pretending that we are less of a beacon of light than we actually are, hiding that brings nothing but trouble.
Was it, there was someone who said, and it's probably been said by many people, that our greatest fear isn't, like, we think our greatest fear is death or public speaking, but it's not actually our greatest fear. It has been said is our greatness. Like, we fear our greatness, because as you rightfully pointed out, Mimi, for many of us, it's like, well, if I'm in the light and I embody the light and I embody my greatness, well, what's that going to mean for all the other personal relationships that I have? What are other people going to think? What are other people going to say? And sadly, that keeps us very much playing small, and it restricts our nervous system capacity. It restricts our capacity to be who we are. And this is why I think it's so important that we surround ourselves with people and with a community that are committed to the same principles and committed to the same outcomes, because we're also interconnected. That as more of us boldly expand into our greatness and embody our greatness, I think that will give more permission to more people to join that movement and to join that momentum.
Yes, I agree with you, because like attracts like.
Mm. And also, I mean, this is actually very much alive right now in my own personal life. I've noticed, as I've been, I regularly take audits and inventories of things that need to be changed in my life, things that are working and things that aren't working. One of the most painful experiences of 2023 was actually the realization that a lot of people that are in my life, close people that I've kept in my life because I've known them since childhood or since or even since birth, that their place needs to be reserved. I actually realize that those relationships are actually quite toxic. They're not functioning, they're not functional, and they're not working. And I think it's so important to and I had to release those relationships and obviously mourn them and grieve them. But what happened after those relationships left my life is there was now space for more functional relationships to enter in, and relationships to enter in where those people had the same goals and the same outcomes. And I think when our systems are still carrying imprints and seeds and nuances of unresolved stuff from the past or unresolved internal conflicts, that keeps us stuck, or that keeps our nervous systems flocking to other nervous systems that are alike. And yes, as we change the texture of our nervous systems and we want to create more space, not just internally, but in our lives, our nervous systems start flocking towards other nervous systems that are looking for the same experiences of expansion and growth and sovereignty.
I wholeheartedly agree with you there, Faye. And it's so true, because I think the time now is to shed all the fakeness, all the old wood, so to speak, and really let go of those things that are holding us down, the people that were once in our life that really have no place in our life anymore, because we're not going towards the same horizon, we're not going in the same direction, and actually it's detrimental to be with those people because their alignment is in one journey and our alignment is on another journey. And thank you for the experience and thank you for the lesson, but we have to release.
But we let them go with love, with a lot of love.
Good luck.
Lot of love and a lot of appreciation. Like those people that I've had to let go, I actually still miss them. Like, it's not that I still miss them. I missed what they represented, but I know that there's no place for them in 2024 in my life, with the way that relationship looks, because they've been given chances, to to change the way that relationship looks. There's no place for it now in 2024. And, Simon, I think it was Simon Sinek that said, I think it was him that said that we're the sum of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. Was it him who said that, Mimi?
I don't know, but I have heard that before.
Yeah, it might be. Or if it's not him, it's someone equally wise. But it is so true. Like, we quite literally rub off on each other, like quite literally. And the things that you talk about, or the things that the things that those old relationships want to converse about or focus on or do, if they're not in alignment with what matters to you now, and what you want to talk about now, and what you want to think about, and what you want to invest in, and where you want to go now, there's no reason to stay in those relationships that actually don't serve your future.
Yeah, that is so true, because if you are not helping me and I'm not helping you, then there is no time to waste in pursuing anything. It is better to just let it go and to also accept, and it's so difficult, that every single person in our life has a time scale. I truly believe that it is, call it what you want, kismet, destiny, fate, that everyone has their appointed time with us, and we cannot spend a single second longer with them than what is written. I really believe that, because we come to this earth to learn. We come to this earth for a much higher purpose. And I learned this lesson, and I'm still learning this lesson, Faye, is I respect myself. So therefore, if somebody out there isn't showing me respect, then they don't deserve to be in my life.
Yeah. And then it's also defining for yourself what respect looks like, right? Like, it's not just the way they speak to you, but it's the way they speak about you. Absolutely. Or the way they speak about you when you're not there.
Yes.
Or, it's all those little nuances. And I know for me, because, as it's very much a work in progress. And one of the things that unresolved internal conflict and unresolved trauma does is it eats away at like your self-worth and your self-esteem. And this is very much, like putting up with behaviors like how people talk about you during your absence is very much reflective of how you view yourself, is very much a reflection of the worth that you have on yourself, is very much a reflection on what you find acceptable about how the closest people to you are going to relate about you. I mean, this is not talking about like, oh, some random person that you don't know has an opinion of you that they share. So what I'm talking about like people that you choose deliberately to bring into your life and to keep close within your inner circle. That's what I'm talking about. That's where we need to have standards about those people, and to revisit those standards and revisit like who remains in the inner circle and who doesn't. Because I think it's quite unacceptable for people that have closest access to you not to be your advocates out there in the world, especially when other people are assaulting you.
Well, they say, look at how someone talks. There is a saying, look at how someone talks about someone else, and that is how they will talk about you.
100%. And not to use memes on Instagram as a standard, but when I was going through the mourning and grieving process last year of like, I'm talking about 5 close relationships that I had to let go of. And I think that's part of I think the shedding of the past. Anyway, one of the memes that I came across is God removed people from your life because they overheard conversations about you when you were not there.
I've seen that. I've seen that.
You've seen it, eh?
Yes. And I thought, oh my goodness, I never thought about that. But actually, it's true.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yes, I mean, this journey is it takes so many different twists and turns. It's not just about like what you do for your nervous system or what you do for your subconscious mind or what you do for your body or what you do for your nutrition or what you do for movement. Like all of that is very important, yes, but it's also what do you do with personal relationships and the place that they have in your life? Like how are you relating? How are you consuming that part of your life? So important, so important. And it always, all of that stuff always ends up being a reflection of where we're at in our own journey.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what's interesting is that the people, once you let these people go, there's a heavy load of your soul, of your body, of your mind, and you feel as if you're not carrying them anymore. And that in itself, I think, gives us the opportunity to heal again, because there are things, as we all know, energetically, where people do take the energy of other people, and it really does affect us, and it can be in a good
We
way.
consume, yeah.
Yeah, and in a negative way. And
Yeah.
when you feel tired, I always see this as a sort of a gauge. If I'm very tired around a person, then I know that's not my person.
Yeah, it's the co-regulation piece, right? Like from a nervous
Mm.
system perspective, it's we end up experiencing the subconscious reality of the other person that we're in physical space with. So we end up
Yeah.
feeling their emotions, we end up feeling their internal reality. And so I think this is why it's so important to be very intentional about who we bring into our sphere, into our closest sphere. Because obviously, like in a workplace, or when you're, traveling somewhere, like you don't have a lot of choice. But I'm talking about like who you choose to seek out to spend time with, who you choose to bring into your home, who you choose to go to their home with, who you choose to go on vacation with, who you choose to do activities with. Those are the types of relationships that I'm talking with, because there's a lot of relationships that we need to be part of in life that are transactional, functional relationships that we can't be intentional about. I mean, we don't all have the freedom to choose, who's going to be our colleagues, but we can choose how far to take a relationship with a colleague that we have no choice over.
And it's choice. This is the most important thing, is that people don't always remember, me included, I have to say, is that we actually have a choice. And that is such an empowering thing to realize, actually, no, I don't want to go there. I don't want to be with that person because it doesn't make me feel good.
No.
And that is a respect for your whole body, especially for your nervous system, because I feel then that my nervous system isn't going to be going haywire because it's fighting against something that I don't even want to be around.
It's part of the honoring yourself and honoring the inner call. One of the biggest things that gets people into trouble, particularly women. Women are particularly susceptible to it. Is saying yes when they mean no, overextending ourselves, people pleasing. That's such a recipe for burnout, and it's such a recipe for nervous system dysregulation. When you know that you'd rather stay home and cook a home cooked meal, but you end up saying yes to an invitation because you don't want to let someone down, or that what you would like is a slow morning, but you end up dishonoring that because you feel like you need to be at something that's going on because you have fear of missing out. Like all of those things, if they're done in isolation once or twice as an occasional thing, it's okay, because sometimes, yes, we do have to honor commitments, absolutely. But what I'm talking about is when it becomes habitual. It's when we automate the practice of saying yes when we mean no, at the expense of what our body and our internal self is asking us to do.
Yeah, that's a very good explanation. And I always liken it to, actually, when people ask me to go somewhere and I don't want to go, Faye, I just say, I'm just not in the mood to be friendly. And actually, that is the truth. I don't want to be friendly because I'm just not in the mood, and I don't want to be false. So I'd rather not go. And that is a really big step, and it's a continual learning curve. But unless we do that, unless, as you say, we honor that, I think we're always going to be in a whirlpool of extreme emotions, extreme situations. But when we actually make a stand in our life and take that control back into our hands, then I think a huge shift happens.
And we flex the the agency muscle, and we also flex the autonomy, and we flex the sovereignty muscle, that I'm actually in charge of my own life. I'm in charge of my own decisions. I'm in charge of my own destiny. Like it has such a deeper ripple down effect, other than, an isolated thing that involves a social situation. I think it helps us to also strengthen and embody that future version of ourselves that's in charge of their lives.
Superb. Absolutely superb. And Faye, listen, I could talk to you for hours.
I was just thinking the same thing, Mimi. I was just thinking.
Honestly, there's so much. And back to the time thing, which, as you know, I'm fascinated, and I know you are, about you are now in the future and I am here now in the present. But actually, it's all an illusion. Because look, we meet, you and I, beyond the time and the space, because we've transcended that. And the people listening out there also transcend that. And we all meet in the moment. And how beautiful is that?
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, I love it. And you really have taught me a lot tonight. And I really want to know so much more. But I want you, please come on again, because
I would love that. I would love that. Maybe we could talk more about more practical ways to support the nervous system, because we didn't get around to doing that. And that's, I'm sure your listeners are saying, it's like, okay, I have buy-in about, I need to care for my nervous system.
I know they are. I know, because I always get told off. I know.
Yeah. But how do I do it? Tell me how. We did talk about one thing, though. We did talk about one thing about, which is about honoring how you feel. I mean, there was one thing that we talked about that's concrete. And the other thing that's concrete is to avoid saying yes when you mean no.
Yes.
But there's so much more. There's so much more around that.
Yes, there is so much more. And come back again, because what we can do is, and I'm sure everybody out there will be saying to me, why didn't you ask this? And I always get a list of things, and why don't you ask this? And why didn't you ask this? And I know friends of mine who say, oh, but I just got into that. Why didn't you ask more about that? But, we can't go into everything. But that's why I would love you to come back and offer some really,
it'd be a pleasure,
important, some really practical solutions for people out there. But in the meantime, of course, they can approach you and visit your website, can't they? What is your website, Faye?
Yes, it's just my name, Faye Lawand, www.faylawand.com. But probably the best way is to just send me an email, just my name, Faye@faylawand.com, or find me on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn, also at Faye Lawand. So just think as Lawand as the magic wand.
Well, Faye is like, it's actually very apt with the wand, because I think the Fae, as in the fairies, do carry wands.
It's the fairy, exactly.
Yeah,
totally.
There you go.
Totally. And I think that's very befitting when you're working with the subconscious mind and the nervous system, which is where all the magic is stored and lies. I think it's very befitting that I was born with those two names. Well, I was given those two names.
I think it's quite beautiful, actually, and very befitting.
Thank you so much, Mimi, and thanks to your listeners. It really was a huge pleasure and a joy to be here with you today and to have this conversation, a very important conversation. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for coming and sharing this, sacred space, really, for people to connect and for us to try to help each other.
Yes, that's what it's all about.
It's all about that in the end. But I wish you a beautiful day, because I know it's day now where you are in New Zealand.
Yes.
And send my greetings to New Zealand. I have never been, but I am fascinated with the Maoris.
Yes, the Maori culture, fascinating culture.
That is something that I am very fascinated, but that's another story for another day.
Yes.
So,
yeah. And I hope you have a good evening, and to you too, and to your listeners as well. Thank you so much, Mimi.
Thank you, Faye. Take care.
Bye, you too. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye. Faye Lawand. Super, absolutely wonderful, and so amazing to meet such wonderful people from the other side of the world. Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me today. Look after yourselves. Do something beautiful for yourselves and enjoy every moment. Until next time, lots of love.
Thank you for listening to Secrets for an Inspirational Life, brought to you by your host, Mimi Novic. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast and see you in the next episode. For more information about Mimi Novic and her books, music, and inspirational work, take a look at her website, www.miminovic.co.uk.